Hey, you're listening to episode 9 of the TA Pedals podcast. I'm Tristan. Stephon, are you there? Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, guys, today Stephon has a lot going on. He's sick, and so he's decided to stay at home. But we decided that we are going to do the podcast remotely. And so I'm going to call him up real quick and see if we can get him on the line.
Hello.
Well, hey there, buddy.
Thanks.
How's it going?
Good.
I went ahead and told everyone what was going on. Told them you weren't feeling the best and you got a lot going on. And so we were going to do this remotely today. So here we are.
Here we are.
Oh, man.
So, what's up?
Oh, nothing much. Just hanging out. I've been playing ESO a little bit this morning. There's like some event thing going on. It's like the third part of an event where you can get this new skin or something. It's stupid, but that's what I've been doing.
Cool.
So, did you hear about the endorsement that we got?
You mentioned something, but I'm not really sure what. I didn't really understand what you meant.
Yeah, let's go ahead and play the endorsement for people. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Professor Charles Xavier. Let's hear what he has to say.
This is Charles Xavier. The X-Men use guitar and bass effects exclusively from TA Pedals. Go to tapedals.com now.
So, can you believe that one of the leader of the X-Men thinks that we have great pedals?
I can believe that because I think that we do.
Yeah, we do. But, I mean, it's just like a man that is that smart can't be wrong. You know what I mean? He can literally read the mind of everyone in the world at the same time.
And they're all thinking that they wish they could find a cooler pedal, and he's like, it's right there. You just have to find it.
Exactly. So I'm hoping that he can use Cerebro to place the thought into people's head to, go to our website and help support us, because we have a lot of cool stuff that's coming out pretty soon. So, I mean, you heard it here first, folks. Charles Xavier, if it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for anyone, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he's willing to go as far as shoot out a message about us, then why not just jump in his little Cerebro or whatever and put it all in their minds already anyway.
Yeah, I thought about having him do that, but he's really hard to get a hold of, and he said, that Cerebro is kind of like an ice cream machine at McDonald's. It rarely ever works. He got lucky when he was, shooting for the movie or the movies that he's used that in, but over the last couple months, it hasn't been working. I even offered to give him, the $1 billion that he needed to get it worked on, but he said that that's not something he's interested in. That the X-Men isn't, they're a nonprofit organization, and he feels bad taking my money when he has so much power and influence. So I told him I understood it, and if he could just shoot me a voice recording, it would be fine, and we just put it on the podcast.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, not sketchy in any way whatsoever. Totally real. Oh man. Well,
so what's on the agenda?
Well, I figured first, because of that endorsement, we would talk about how crazy AI is getting. It's nuts, dude. Like all the deep fakes and stuff. Like I don't know if you've seen like the videos that have been coming out are they're super convincing. Like there's one of Vladimir Putin like opening a briefcase, and he takes this thing out that looks like a big red button that you would use to like launch nukes, and then he like wags his finger like, nope, that's not what it is. And then he like takes a bite out of it because it's like a muffin or something, and then he like dances like while he's like chewing on the muffin, and it looks so real. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
I'll have to send it to you.
Sounds very interesting.
It's probably the craziest deep fake I've ever seen. It's like if you showed it to anyone, they probably wouldn't know that it was fake. It's that good.
Definitely gonna have to watch it.
It's kind of scary, you know, like living in a time where, you know, we can see that in the not so distant future, it's you're not going to be able to tell what's real and what's fake.
Yeah,
it's getting really convincing.
It's one of those things where if it's almost like if you see it on a screen, it's most likely going to be fake.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where you have to like see it right in front of you in order to believe that it's real.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder if there's ever going to be like some sort of like verification system, you know, to let people know that it is verified content. Kind of like they do with, you know, like Twitter profiles or Instagram, like the little blue check mark. But it's weird because like using that kind of technology could have serious implications for the rest of the world. Like it could be used in disinformation wars and can really cause conflict, you know?
Yeah, and we're kind of supposed to be working toward a point in time where, we have world peace and stuff, but we're just creating more and more problems that surface hatred, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's like I know that you and I like very very briefly talked about you know, the new Matrix video game or whatever, where it's supposed to be like fully submersive like artificial reality essentially. It's not like augmented reality, it's just virtual reality, but like it's supposed to like I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's like using Unreal Engine 5 to generate all the graphics, and it looks very convincing. Like the lighting, the way it reflects off the buildings, just all the moving parts. Like as you look over the city, like you can see all the cars and stuff, and it's just like ultra fine detail. It's kind of scary, and you know, I've always joked around with Sydney about like stuff like Sword Art Online, where you know, you'd like put on the helmet, and then some sort of electronic interface would like intercept your brain signals, and that way it could provide haptic feedback while you're laying still, you know, like in a bed or whatever, wherever you'd be comfortable, and you would actually feel like you were in another world. And I've always joked with Sydney and told her that like if there ever comes a point where I can go into a virtual world and fight dragons and stuff, like some sort of fantasy realm where I wouldn't get hurt, but I could live like a second life, I was like, I'm out of here. Like, sorry.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I'm all for that too. Like if I can, experience something outside of this world, um, that's like fully immersive and there's no consequence or anything like that, then I'm completely all for that.
It would just be wild to like, you know, go into Skyrim or something.
We're closer to that than like a lot of people realize, because like even like Elon Musk has been developing like that there's like a chip or something that he's like talking about like implementing into your brain where you can like feed um, information or whatever. Like you can transfer information to the chip, and the chip would then transfer information into your brain, almost like an external hard drive kind of thing.
Yeah, he the way he like described like the first version of Neuralink is like they would cut out a like quarter-sized piece of bone from your skull and then feed wires into parts of your brain to restore motor function. So their first step would be like essentially therapy to restore function of your limbs or to function of people's limbs who have been paralyzed. And then he said like the next step would be essentially increasing the bandwidth of how much information your brain can process at a time, because he said like we're already kind of doing that with our cell phones in our hands in a very crude way, and it's just that the information has to be processed by our eyes and then goes into our brain. But with Neuralink, if it could connect to a phone or a Wi-Fi network or some other interface, he said that like essentially the information wouldn't have to go through one of your senses. It would just be translated directly by your brain, as if like your brain was able to process the code and see things, which is nuts. That's so crazy.
And it is like we like for for the past at least 50 years, like doctors and scientists have compared. It's like since the computer was invented, like it's been compared to the human brain, like the way that the like a CPU processes information or whatever is similar to how a brain processes information. And like we have electrical current going through our body, and like our our brain works off of like stimulating certain parts of the brain through electrical current, and it's like we're not far off from being able to do something like that. It's just finding a way to create something that can be implemented into that type of current that we have in our body.
Yeah, it kind of goes to, I don't know, have you ever heard of the like the brain in a vat argument?
No.
It's essentially it's like saying, well, if all your senses are just electrical signals being processed by your brain, every single thing that you experience in your life, the feeling of a table on your fingertips, or, like right now, the sound of your voice and my voice in my ears, the things that I'm seeing, it's all just electrical signals. And so if that's the case, then like what is the argument against the fact that all of us, or even I guess on an individual level, say that what's to say that I'm not a vat or a brain sitting in a vat of fluid in a lab somewhere, and some sort of computer is feeding my brain with information that makes me feel like I'm experiencing everything that I'm experiencing. It could all just be, some sort of simulation that is being fed to me by an outside source, and I wouldn't know the difference, and I can't disprove it.
That falls under the whole Matrix conspiracy thing, and
Exactly.
it's like, and like for me, like I don't like I can see the idea, and like I understand it, but for me, I don't think that like that's what's currently happening, because how do you, with all the people in the world, how do you get all those individual details specific to that one person across all the people that are in the world?
Do you mean like, are you asking if like we all every brain, every person in the world is like experiencing a shared reality and all the details
I'm
have to line up. Is that what you mean?
I'm saying, yeah, I mean, kind of, but like, so like every single person on in our existence on our technically on our planet, like that's because that's where our existence is at, is on planet Earth. So every person that is on Earth has their own specific experience, and in order for that to happen, someone would have to pay very close attention to that specific person's experience, and to do that times 8 billion, you know what I mean? Like, that seems radical to me. Like, I mean, like, if you look on your ground, what do you see?
I see a rug and some recording gear and some like wood grain from the flooring.
Well, for me, I see some weird little fan ninja star kind of thing made out of paper that my kids made, and a green Minecraft water cup, and a red and white blood donation bracelet, something like that. You know, like, see what I mean? Like, there's individual specific things, details in my experience, and then there's individual specific details in your experience, and I can go into your space and see those same things that you see. Vice versa, you can come into mine and see those individual things that are experiences for me. So like, it just seems a little crazy to me to think that we're not currently living our own realities, and not in a simulation.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't believe we're currently living in a simulation. I just don't think that we are. But I do think that it's possible because of a couple things. Like the argument against, like, I guess like what you were saying is like, in my experience, maybe you're not real. Like maybe um it's kind of like, in a video game where only what is viewable by the current perspective of the first person view, like the camera, you know, only what's in view of the current camera view is what's rendered. So like right now, for example, I'm sitting in, my music room, and I'm in this room by myself. There's four walls. I can see out the window a little bit if I turn my head. And I see everything that's in this room. But if all that's needed for my current reality is, only viewable, I guess what I'm saying is I can only view a certain amount of things within a certain distance. And so if I was being simulated, or if I was in a simulation rather, all that would need to be rendered or projected to me would be what I can currently observe. Now that's, presuming that everything else around me, everyone is not real, that we're not in a
Yeah.
shared experience. But the other argument would be that, if we are in some sort of simulation, we don't know how like long time has existed outside of our experience. And so if you think about how far technology has come, in the last 100 years, it's, exponential growth, and the things that we've been able to do are absolutely ridiculous. I think there was like a 50-year period between the first airplane and landing the first man on the moon, like shooting someone off the planet. So say that, outside of our simulation, the time has, we're not in 2022. Say we're in 50,374. Like, think about like what the technology could be in that year or whatever. So our perception of time could be skewed by the simulation, and there could be, we could have advanced, or another civilization could have advanced enough to produce technology that could put us all in a shared simulation where all the, like, we have the processing power to render an entire world down to, the very fine details. Um,
Yeah,
all that
but to
being said,
what?
I don't think that's true.
I don't think it's true either because like to what extent? Like I wouldn't choose to go into a simulation and live the life I'm living. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going into a simulation, I want it to be something that's fun, exhilarating, and I never, get a. There's like no time for me to be like, man, this sucks.
Right. Well, like,
So like, yeah, I mean,
in the Matrix, that whole idea was like the first Matrix movie was like the fifth iteration of the simulation, and the simulations that had come before it were more experimental, where the machines were trying to put the humans in an environment where their brain would accept it, essentially,
yeah,
because the brains of humans were so primitive compared to the technology. And so, like, there was like a simulation that was based on like horror, and there were like vampires and stuff, but like people couldn't survive in that type of simulation. And then there was one where everyone was living their ideal life and everyone was happy, and the brain wouldn't accept that either. And then there was one where I think like everyone was miserable, and like their brain wouldn't accept that. And so, like, by the time the machines figured out what type of simulation people could survive in, where they could use them, like keep them incubated without the brain rejecting the technology and the simulation itself. It was a simulation where the people had the illusion of free will, and for our primitive brains and what we experience in our world currently, or whatever, like, no one would choose this, but it's the most like realistic situation based on the circumstances. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, you're right. No one would choose this for ourselves, but if everyone could be a superhero that never died and was super rich and had all the pleasure that they could, imagine, I don't think that would make for a realistic um experience if we were being enslaved by machines. Like,
but
I don't know.
for me, for my thought process, okay. So if everyone, if the machines were trying to find a way to give everyone a realistic version of reality, um, giving them some hardships, but allowing them to live a life that is, in the most part, real. So, like, there's happy times, there's sad times, and there's hard times, and there's good times. So, like, why are there people out in the world that are having a tougher time than others? And some people out there are having a really, really good time. So, like, if like, what I'm saying is like each individual person would have a balanced, like, good to hard, you know,
Ratio.
ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, rather than like this part of the world is doing pretty good and this part of the world is practically in hell, and like this person here is like had such a hard life that they're about to kill themselves, and this person is like doing the best that they could ever do. You know what I'm saying? There's too much fluctuation in the reality that we have currently to be like, this is fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, what if do you think that maybe maybe it's kind of like Monsters Inc., like, where they go in initially scaring the kids because they think that produces the most energy. And then by the end of the movie, they figure out that, making kids laugh produces, an adequate amount of energy as well, even more so. So what if it's like one of those situations where, based on an individual's like brain chemistry or whatever, like maybe their experience is tailored to an experience that would produce the most processing power for the machines, and for each person, that's a little bit different. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, see, like that another problem that I have with that is that there are people out there that can't deal with life so much to the extent where they're constantly on drugs so that they can be out of it. Like, how much energy could that possibly be producing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So like it makes sense to an extent, but then there's like how much energy, like if you're putting this person through so much hard times that they end up on drugs and not producing any energy at all for you, then what's the point of doing that to them? You know what I mean?
Well,
Like if it's an energy thing where like we need, this much power, then we need to put everyone in a position where they're giving out the same amount of power or the maximized amount of power, not letting this group of people over here not have any power coming out of them at all.
the way that I've always thought about it, and I think that when the creators of the Matrix like talked about this, they kind of backpedaled on the story a little bit, and because the Matrix came out in like 2001 or whatever, and that was like before, everyone had a computer in their house, but technology was definitely on the rise. And they talked about how in the original concept they weren't using the enslaved humans for batteries. They were actually using them for processing power. And but I guess when they were talking about like how the public was going to receive the movie, they thought that maybe the general public wasn't tech savvy enough to understand the nuances or whatever of like what processing power is and how computers work and whatever. So they changed it to where the humans were being used as batteries instead, which that is so flawed in itself because of the conservation of, energy. And like if there is, if they're feeding people food to keep them alive in the incubators or whatever, it's going to use energy. It's going to take energy to keep that person alive and therefore like output less energy. So that whole concept is flawed anyway. And I wish they would have just stuck with the original idea to use the humans as processing power instead, because that makes more sense to me. And in my thought process, it's like what we're talking about. I feel like maybe people feel stressed or they feel like they are undergoing a hardship, and that's their brain in outside of the simulation being pressed for more processing power. That's just what my idea of it.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, it makes sense. It makes sense, and I understand like the concept and all that stuff. It just there's too many things. There's more things in our reality that go towards the side of like we're living our current reality rather than we're living in a simulation. You know what I mean? There's too many.
Yeah.
There's too many factors that point to that we're in our current reality.
Yeah. There was, I think it was maybe like Joe Rogan. I think maybe he was talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, if I'm remembering correctly. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was essentially saying that like time, has existed for billions and billions of years. And like it's mathematically more probable that we are in a simulation. But like Joe had an adequate question too. He was like, well, what's to say that we, like, even though eventually it's kind of inevitable that we will exist within a simulation or whatever because of, increasing technology. But he was like, well, what's to say that we're at that point already? And he was like, well, it's just mathematically probable. He's like, yeah, it might be probable, but doesn't that mean there's a chance that we aren't there yet, that we're not in the simulation yet? And he was like, well, there's a chance, but like it's probable that we are. And he's like, but
It's
maybe
probable
not.
for either. It's probable for either side. Like
Yeah.
it's mathematically probable that we are in a simulation. It's also mathematically probable that we aren't in a simulation. So like there's it's not a question of whether or not we are or aren't. It's more of like, do we let ourselves believe it or not?
Right. And I've thought about that, quite a bit. And it's like, well, whether I have the illusion of choice or whether everything around me is real or not, there is absolutely no way for me to prove or disprove that. And so I have to live my life as if we're not in a simulation and that my actions have, real repercussions. And, I believe they do. I don't believe that we're in a simulation or whatever, but like, regardless of whether I do or don't, I can't prove it. And I have no absolute proof. So it can't change the way that I live my life or the decisions that I make.
Yeah.
But man, I'm not going to stop, thinking about it and looking for glitches in the Matrix, the black cat, the deja vu, because
The
some
Mandela
things are
effect.
weird.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. There's a lot of strange happenings in the world, but I think the world's
I
just weird.
feel I'm more in line with like there's possible like splits in reality or multiple realities or every decision splits off into a separate reality. I'm more in line with that than believing that we're in Matrix.
I saw something kind of interesting about that just this morning actually. It was like a guy talking about how like you can never actually die. Like no one ever actually dies. Like it just your consciousness splits off into another reality where you still exist, but in that reality that you quote unquote died in, you died for everyone else, but you didn't actually die. Your consciousness was just transferred to another reality where that close call, where a car ran a stoplight and almost hit you if you would have, if you wouldn't have pressed the brake at just the right moment. There's one reality where you died and everyone in that reality thinks you died, but in your experience and your perception, you made the stop. Like you made it, you didn't die, and everything continues as normal. And I was like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, like I like that. That's kind of like how I feel about it, except for the part where the comment of nobody ever actually dies because our bodies give out at some point, and just like if you die of old age, you're not splitting off into reality and living longer,
Right.
So eventually, everyone eventually does die, whether it's from old age or not. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
like the idea that like if this happens, like there's two different outcomes and one outcome is in one reality and one outcome is in a different reality, like that's kind of where I'm at on the belief thing. But as far as like nobody ever really dies, that like get out of here with that. Because we don't have anyone, like if you think about it, like if we like if in any reality like someone dies of old age, but then in a different reality they keep living and don't die of old age. Like, where's that guy that's been living for 500 years?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I totally feel you on
So,
that. And that was my first thought too, is like, maybe you don't die in an accident, but you've got to die eventually. But then, that's where people come in with the whole afterlife thing. Like, maybe it is just another reality and your consciousness is just transferred, to some fourth, fifth, or sixth dimensional body or something. Like, well, we don't really have evidence for that necessarily. So,
I mean, if we can get to a point where we're able to enter into a simulated world and live within that world, then we've broken the fourth dimension.
yeah, for sure.
Because we are living, our consciousness and our bodies are outside in an outside world while living within a different 3D world, and therefore we are able to jump between realities. Therefore, we have entered the fourth dimension.
Do you think that once we're able to transfer, quote unquote, transfer our consciousness into a machine, do you think that being that's in the machine is actually you? It's kind of like, I can't remember the name of the philosophical argument, but it's about the ship of something, and it's like over, it's an ancient ship, and over time the ship degrades and people restore it, and a board breaks in the side and they put a new board, and then the whatever, until you keep replacing parts and repairing it until the entire ship has been replaced. And is it the same ship? And that's kind of how I wonder about the consciousness thing. Like, if you make some sort of transfer, is it an actual transfer, or is it a copy and a simulation of how your brain functioned previously, but it's not really your brain or your consciousness, it's a copy of your brain or consciousness? So is that you?
See, it's weird that you bring up the ship thing, because I've been watching One Piece a lot, and it's funny because their original ship, they put it through so much stuff. Like, they ran around like the ocean and been in so many battles and done so many crazy things, and they've repaired it and repaired it and repaired it. And by the time that they get to like this place that builds ships, and they're like, we want our ship like redone and like built like new, like we want the same ship, but we want it completely redone, and we want it to look exactly the way it is. And they're like the like the center piece that runs along the bottom of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's the base, the backbone of the whole ship. If that gets damaged, that ship is dead. So like, you have to scrap it and build a new ship. Sure, you can build a ship that looks exactly like it, but it's not going to be that same exact ship, because it's not going to have that same backbone, because that backbone is damaged and you can't do nothing to fix it.
Right.
So like in a sense, like, yeah, it's a copy. Your brain, if you copy your brain into like, it depends on, I guess it depends on how you do it. Like, would you like copy everything in your brain, all your memories and all your emotions and all your feelings, copy all of those things and transfer into a memory bank of a robot or whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
It depends on, I think it would depend on how you did it. Like, if you transferred your brain into a solution, I guess, like a liquid that could preserve your brain forever, and then therefore using that to operate the machine. Like, I don't feel like that would be a copy,
Right.
because you're keeping your brain. But like, if you were to take everything in your brain and separate it from the actual entity that it came from and put it into something else, then that's a, you know, I don't think that works. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Have you ever seen the show on Netflix called Altered Carbon?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that's what I think more realistically it'll be, and I think that is a copy. I don't think that that's you. But then, like, what is it? You know, I mean, obviously, it's an artificially simulated version of your brain, but like, it's not you. And so, like, uh, is it a silicon based life form? Like, is it a new type of life, or I don't know. It gets
Well, in
weird.
altered carbon, um, basically they build a body out of organic material, just like, like a normal human is created, and they transfer the consciousness from the original body into the new one. And like, I don't know how much of altered carbon you've actually seen, but in the, I think it's the second season, like at some point there is a time where he a guy transfers his consciousness into a body, but keeps, like, it copies into a new body, but keeps the same consciousness in his original body. Therefore, there's two of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
And like, yeah, so
well,
it's a copy.
that's what I think is weird is like I haven't seen the second season of Altered Carbon, but in the first one, you know, they have like the discs and they have like backups.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are the backups then? You know what I mean? Like that's not the same. That's not even the same copy of the simulation. But like, did they ever like? I guess like in that situation, you could have some sort of like cloud backup that continually updated the backup disks based on like the experiences that you're currently having or whatever. Man, I don't know. It could
Well, I
get
mean,
so
like,
crazy.
in that sense, it kind of works like a computer does. And like, if you have a backup at this specific date, and you get to a point, like, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, and you're like, oh, this is, like, my computer's like being weird and I don't like it, and so your only option is to revert to the backup. You're losing 3 years worth of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah, that would be
Uh,
wild. Like your memory's
so
just
like,
wiped.
and yeah, and in that sense, it's. I mean, it does work like that in Altered Carbon. Like, there's specific examples where, like, if you're, like, you have a disc with that's a copy of this specific day, then everything that you've lived through, you lose if you go back to that date. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
there's
yeah.
specific examples where that happens in Altered Carbon. So they're essentially, you know, using like a conscious based form of a backup on, like, but like, in any sense though, like, if I copy a file on my computer and send it to you and you open it, there's no change whatsoever in the file that you have compared to the file that I have.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, yeah, like, I would in my sense, I would say that, yeah, it's a copy, but what's the difference? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's just a different, I mean, not even different. I wouldn't say different, but it's a copy of the data itself. You know what I mean? Down to the code.
Yeah,
But you're right, it's not different and no one would know the difference, you know, if it was an exact copy, but just it's like just knowing that it's different, that it is a copy, it's not the original is I think for humans hard to process because we have never been able to do that and we're just now getting to the point in you know, the I guess our development where we can see the future and see that actually will be possible. Like it's been,
Yeah.
that idea has been conceived within the last, you know, definitely 150 years. And there's been philosophical debates that, like the ship, that kind of tie into it, but it wasn't based around copying consciousness, which is
Yeah.
nuts though that it still applies. But it's crazy that we're living in a time where, you and I are, close to 30 years old or whatever. You're a bit older than me, and growing up where no one had cell phones, and in the time of dial-up internet, and
Oh my
going like going to what we're seeing now, where you can operate drones from like space or whatever, like they're satellite controlled, and they're being used in warfare, and like just our technological capabilities have skyrocketed, and we are able to imagine what the future is going to be like, and it is wild. It's absolutely insane. We're in a
God.
weird period.
I don't think about that much, but like when I was growing up, like we watched TV on the TV, like the TV that we watched was like actual TV, like cable and stuff like that. And we had VCR tapes.
Yeah.
And like CDs weren't really a thing until like, you know, I knew what music was.
Right, yeah. It was tapes.
And it's like, and like internet was a like a phone wire into the wall, and like you couldn't be on the phone while you were on the internet.
Right.
Like it's just like it's like crazy. Like I'm not even that old, and like
No.
it's gone to the point where like internet is anywhere you go, and it's free if you like you go to McDonald's or Taco Bell or Starbucks and you have internet for free. Like, and it's you don't have to plug into anything, you don't have to do nothing, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, I feel like that you and I fall within a very like unique time frame. You know what I mean? Like our parents'
Yeah,
generation, they're not really adapting to new technology, and especially our grandparents, are not really adapting to new technology. They might have a tablet that they browse Facebook on or whatever, but like they're not using it to the extent that our generation is, or the generation below us. Like the younger generation is completely taking on a new lifestyle, and incorporating technology into literally like everything they do. But you and I grew up in that weird time frame where like our childhood was not consumed by technology, but now our life, like we're able to integrate technology um in a, like, I guess in a more efficient way than our parents, because we did grow up with it. Like it's like technology was integrated into our lives at the perfect moments where we could straddle both lifestyles. It's strange. It's really weird.
yeah, and like it's cool that we have where we kind of have like the best of both worlds, where like we grew up knowing, like learning about like all the analog ways of doing things, but also at the same time learning about all the new, technology things that make things easier. But like at the same time, like we can do both. And then like my kids growing up now, like the schools don't really teach you very much how to spell anymore because like most of the stuff they do is on the computer, and it has, grammar check and like correcting the spelling of words. But if you were to make them sit down and write on a piece of paper, like they have no way to know if they're spelling everything right.
Right, which is
You know what I
nuts.
mean?
I've thought about that a lot before too. Like you don't need to learn grammar and you don't like really even need to learn different languages anymore. Like well, I mean that's debatable, but like there is technology coming forth like from Google, like an earpiece
Yeah,
that you can use to like in real time translate different languages. And
yeah,
it's like technology is just getting to the point where it's so convenient that there's no way you're going to be able to um, integrate into society eventually without adopting and integrating the technology into your everyday experience. And going back to what you said about analog and digital, that brings us to guitar pedals. It's all coming full circle at 50 minutes into this. Um,
well,
we like analog, we like digital, and we've talked about um, going surface mount with a lot of our parts and kind of like thinking about future proofing things.
yeah.
What do you think about like where we're at on that journey?
I think we're really, really close to a point where we're ready to start working with digital stuff.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
I'm really excited to get into that because not that I don't love analog pedals, they're great, but like I'm also really excited to sit at a computer and code for a little while. Like that, I think that's going to be really exciting and fun. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds boring and tedious to me, but at the same time, I feel like, like we come from like an in between, and we're more we're more leaned into the, technological side of things than the analog side of things.
hmm
So I feel like as far as like building guitar pedals, I feel like building like digital things is going to be a lot easier for us to handle than analog stuff. Not saying that we should do away with analog, because do like I like messing around with the analog stuff for sure. But like if we can throw out some digital stuff, in addition to that, like that's going to be more fun for us, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And just thinking about like all of the possibilities with digital gets me really excited. And along with like going to like thinking about surface mount parts, including like the potentiometers and the resistors and even diodes you can get in surface mount, which is crazy. I've been thinking a lot about that, and like as far as like my mindset when we do these kinds of things, it's oftentimes for me about making it the best, most efficient product we can. And, like with the shark pedal, for example, that board is packed. It is absolutely stuffed to the brim, and there's not really any more room to fit anything on that PCB. And so,
Yeah,
but if we would have went surface mount with it, there would have been plenty of space. And so,
yeah,
like, it's just one of those things where, like, I'm familiar with through hole components because that's what I started with, and those are like the easiest, I guess, like entry level experienced uh, type of components, I guess you could say. But like now that we're getting more comfortable with everything and me wanting it to be as efficient as possible and, technologically sound, I'm really excited to go into surface mount parts. It's gonna be a lot more stable and just better all around, I think. and we are future proofing our circuits. And I think that that's really interesting, actually.
And what I think is really cool is that you could you can like um I don't know what the solution is that you use for the surface mount. I don't know what it's called, but you can drip that on like all the solder points of the board and put your pieces on, and then throw a heat gun over it and have everything done all at once.
Oh yeah, like the solder paste with the
Yeah,
flux in it. Yeah,
yeah,
the flux is like what for anyone who's listening that doesn't know, flux is like what makes uh, the solder wick up onto the contact points of the components. And so it's really interesting actually. Like you can watch solder climb up a component vertically, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's pretty wild, honestly, but that's how a lot of like really packed surface mount uh, circuit boards are made. Like they'll spray the entire board with flux, and then put their solder paste down, and then put the components on, and then run it even through something like an oven, like something you can like see like at a pizza place or something, like a conveyor belt. And as the solder melts, it wicks up onto the points, and then all you have to do is clean the excess flux off. And it is so efficient. Like that's how like a factory would do it. That's not how we're going to be doing it. Of course, we're going to have to get in there with tweezers and put the components on with the paste by hand. And I'm excited to do that too, but it's just crazy like how much more efficient going surface mount is. You can mass produce things pretty easily if you have
yeah,
the equipment.
yeah. It's crazy. That brings me to a point where I'm like, I kind of want to start working on the SMD version of the Vampire Squid.
Let's
So,
go.
so you'll have to look up the parts for me and shoot me the footprints so I can start working on that.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I can probably do that today cuz I'm really excited about that too. That's a circuit that we are very familiar with, and we will be able to compare and contrast if there's any sort of sound difference between SMD and through hole, which I don't think there is. I think that that is actually one reason that I've been avoiding SMD though, is because it seems like some people in the guitar community think that if you go surface mount, that it sounds different, even though the components have the same values and they have the same tolerances. You know, maybe actually even better tolerances. In a lot of cases. So like it shouldn't sound any different. You know what I mean? So I'm really excited to compare and
it
contrast and all that.
it
It's
shouldn't
really
sound
exciting.
different, but even if it does, like how much of a difference is it really? And can you not like dial back a knob or two just a little bit to get the sound that you had before? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how I feel about it too. Because even now, like with the tolerance for parts or whatever, like there can be up to a 10% tolerance in some of the parts that we use just because it's the nature of through hole components. And so not even two squids sound exactly the same, but it's close enough. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's two different pedals completely. So even
Y-
going to SMD should be close enough to not matter at all.
Yeah, exactly. And the SMD components are not as fluc fluctuating, I guess, in their values. Like most of them stay pretty true to their value.
Right, yeah. The SMD resistors that I was looking at have a 1% tolerance. So
Yeah,
I mean that's negligible, but that's the same as the metal film resistors that we currently use in the squid. It's 1% tolerance. So there should be like no difference. So
yeah.
I'm not worried about it at all. I'm very excited. And that dude, the squid board is going to be so small compared to what it would have been if we would have.
Well, it's still gonna be. I mean, it's probably gonna be bigger actually.
Oh, it'll
Because
probably be bigger than the first version, but we're also packing more features on, so it'll be way
yeah,
smaller than if we did version 2
and I
crew
think
hole.
so. Like the knobs that we're using for the shark pedal, I think we should use those for the V2.
Okay. I'm
But not.
I'm
I
down.
mean, not. I don't know if we should do black or if we should do silver. But to the, I mean, silver would look really good.
Honestly,
But
there's
like
so many good options.
to the extent, like I think those ones are a little bit smaller than the current ones that we have.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Not by
and
much,
so
but yeah.
I think they would fit better, especially when we're gonna add that other knob to it.
Yeah, that's true. Oh man, so crazy. So much to do. Well, buddy, we just hit an hour. An hour. That's crazy.
Yeah,
And only like 10 minutes of it was guitar pedal stuff, but I'm okay with that.
that's okay. Our podcasts don't have to be about pedals; they just have to be about us
Yeah, it's just
and who
us.
we are.
We got to
Because
remember that we
the
started
point
this
of
to
yeah,
let people get to know us. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off.
no, it's fine. You said exactly what I was saying.
Oh,
So
yeah, we just want people to get to know us. And this is the kind of stuff we talk about all the time anyway. Like when we're not talking about
yeah,
pedals, this is what we do.
we talk about random things that matter to us in life.
Dude, I try to talk to my wife about this stuff about like what if there's aliens but the universe is expanding at a point, in speed that we'll never, be able to broadcast a signal that's faster than the speed of light to reach the other planets and like whatever, and she's just like, "Oh, yeah. Anyway,
That
what are we having
is
for dinner?"
aliens. Aliens sounds like a different podcast episode
For sure. Next episode maybe.
because I could literally talk uh, for like 2 hours about aliens.
All right, well let's call this one for today then. I think that's a good stopping point.
Alrighty,
All right. Well, thank you guys again for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode. Big shout out and thank you to Stephon for hopping on a call for an hour. I'm glad you were able to be here, buddy. It's been awesome.
that's that. I'm happy to do it. So I
Well,
guess we'll see you later.
all right. Bye.
Bye.